Hey everyone, Spencer Burton here. Allow me to introduce Ron Rohde. He is our ACRE legal contributor, and he'll be sharing a walkthrough of one of his real estate legal documents.
Hi guys, today we're going to be talking about a purchase and sale agreement, in particular a purchase and sale agreement for a multifamily property that is an apartment complex, that can be a low rise, that can be a high rise type building, garden style, what have you. So this article is a really good overview of the purchase and sale agreement and how you can use it to your advantage. And I think that's one of the best pieces of advice is the purchase and sale agreement allows you to have options. It gives you leverage, and the more you understand about it, the better you can work with your attorney or your broker when you're drafting it and then submitting this document to the seller. So I'm going to go through a little bit of the clauses and why you want to choose certain numbers, timing, or even amounts. So again, the role, this is a legally binding document now. It usually follows the LOI. The LOI is what saves you time and gets you on the same page as the seller. The purchase and sale agreement can be 20, 30, 50 pages long. And so you don't want to invest all that time and money to create a purchase and sale agreement if the seller's not going to agree. So again, the most important part is the leases. And what's different about a multifamily property is the sheer volume of leases. You know, you're going to have a few dozen or a few hundred of leases. And what you need is to ensure that those leases are either a standard form contract and that there's no amendments, and that you have a perfect understanding of what all these expiration dates are, what the renewal terms are, and early termination clauses if applicable. And again, it's going to vary how quickly and how legibly the sellers can produce copies of these leases. So residential tenants, you need a system. And I think that no matter how many properties you have, you may not have the manpower or the man hours to review them. So have a system and summarize the findings. That's what you need to be able to make decisions of, are these good organized leases or are these scattered, very inconsistent leases. Physical plant, again, this is probably going to depend on the age of the building, how much maintenance records they have, what their maintenance schedule is, whether they've been putting away money on the P&L for deferred maintenance, CapEx reserves. But the age of the building is going to point to the big areas, right? These are the major trades. Parking lot, roof, HVAC, plumbing, electrical. And because in a residential deal, like a multifamily, you're a gross lease, the landlord is ultimately responsible for all of these expenses. And so when you're buying a multifamily, you need to take better care of reviewing these physical attributes of the purchase property versus a triple net that you might say, well, we're going to pass this on to the tenant, and we're not as worried about maintenance because we can pass it through the tenant after acquisitions. Land, again, this is going to vary whether you have San Francisco, where the percentage of the land value is very high, especially if it's a lower income property, versus if you're in the country, in Lubbock, Texas, where land is quite plentiful and the value is really in the structure and in the improvements. Environmental concerns, again, go with standard lending issues. I don't see too many of these issues come up. Federal and state and local, again, you want to make sure that you're in compliance with city ordinances. Again, unless you're in Texas and you're in Houston, there are a couple of handful cities that don't have any zoning, so that's cool. Deed restrictions, these are very common on types of affordable housing. If you have some type of grants or tax credits, I could talk a lot about that, but I just want to make you aware that if there are deed restrictions, you need to dig into those and find out exactly what they impose on the property. Seller obligations, this is where you're going to put the burden back on the seller, and they're going to be signing certain representations and promises that the income is X, or there's X number of tenants who have all completed this type of agreement. And if they fail in that, you may have funds in escrow, you may have other recourse if they violate these covenants. And I think it's very important that depending on who has more leverage or what type of risk of a property, you can pay, quote, a full price, a full asking price, if you escrow a portion of those funds for some type of performance 6 months down after closing. And that's a good way to say to the seller, well, I'll pay your full price, but you have to ensure that collections stays above 90% for the next 6 months. Things like that, depending on the market you're in, you may be able to get the seller to agree. If you've been in something like seller's market, they're never going to agree. And they're going to take the easiest cash price that doesn't require any holdback or escrow. So again, take a look at the document. There are a lot of paragraphs and clauses. How many days do we allow for this? That's all up to the purchaser and seller. You know, standard 3, 10, 30, 60. Those are all going to be basic. I left some of those filled in, but it's up to the parties to decide how much time they want to allow everything to happen and what the final closing date will be. So that's it from me, but good luck. I think this will be a very useful document. And again, as always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Ron at ronaldrodylaw.com. Thanks.